been telling you for the last time. No, stop bugging me about it, will you? I ain't gonna go to that funeral. I've been to enough funerals to last me a lifetime.
If you can't pay your last respects to poor Aunt Rose at her grave, you should at least go to the visitation and pay your next to the last respects.
Edith, I'm gonna tell you the truth. I didn't have no respects for the woman at all. And that visitating, I hated that. You know that's worse than the burying? I mean, at least with the burying, you're outside, you know? I mean, you can look away. You can look at trees there, or maybe a traffic jam or a holdup or something. Going into one of them mortuarial joints, it gives me the creeps.
But you always say that it gives you a lift when you leave.
Hey, did you see this? Where this Burmese woman, she claims that she slept with 6 presidents? One a Mexican, one a French, and 4 Americans.
Archie, please go with me.
No.
The whole family will be there, and they'll wonder where you are.
Well, just tell them you couldn't take me off my kidney machine. Don't. Will you please? Besides, if I go with you, who's going to take care of the kid?
Oh, I can get a babysitter.
No, you know that I hate strangers in our home.
Archie,
Edith, case closed. Case closed.
I wish I could tell her how bad I feel. I should have gone to see her when she was slipping away.
Oh, well, Lord knows you had plenty of chances for that, Edith. That old ruin's been slipping away for the last 30 years.
Oh, I kept meaning to go, but something always came up.
Ah, come on, will you? Nothing came up, Edith. Why can't you be honest with yourself? You often said yourself that she was the one relative that you misliked the worst.
Oh, no. I just said that she was the one that I didn't like the best.
Geez, you'd find something to like in Castro's beard.
Poor Aunt Rose.
Don't give me the poor Aunt Rose, will you? Boy, that woman hated me. Well, I'll never forget it, our wedding, Edith, the way she come up there and right in front of everybody hollered at you. Edith Baines, you're marrying a very common person. Well, hey, that cut into me over the years, Edith. And I'll never forget when she wrote that letter about me to dear Abby.
Oh, Archie, Rose never wrote that letter.
Oh, come on, Edith. The woman who wrote the letter was from Ozone Park, right? And she signed herself disappointed, right?
Well, there's lots of people that's disappointed in Ozone Park.
Yeah? And you remember what the woman said? She says, Dear Abby, I got a niece that married a bum. Now, who else could that be but me?
You're all dressed up. Where are you going?
Well, I'm gonna pay a little visit to poor Aunt Rose.
She's still sick.
Oh, no, not anymore. She passed away.
Oh, what do you mean, passed away? She didn't have gas. She died.
Die?
That is correct, kiddo. D-Y-E-D, died.
You mean D-I-E-D. D-Y-E-D means changing colors.
Well, I bet she'd done that, too.
Anyway, I'm gonna go see her before her funeral. I meant to go before she went, but she went before I could go. And I made all that nice chicken soup for her, but you and Uncle Archie can have it for dinner. poor Aunt Rose can't eat it now.
Well, I bet if you put it on a coffin, she'd make a grab for it.
Oh, there's the cab. Bye-bye.
Bye, Aunt Edith.
Take it easy.
The soup's all hot. All you gotta do is put it on the table. Bye.
Yeah, enjoy yourself, Edith.
I'm glad I didn't have to go. I'm scared of dead people.
Yeah, well, this person in particular was more scary when she was alive.
The only dead person I ever saw was a cat.
Don't tell me about it, huh?
It was lying on a rock with blood all over it.
She tells me anyway. I hope it wasn't around here.
No, in Central Park.
Oh, Central Park. Well, then the cat must have got mugged.
What's it like to be dead?
Well, how come you're looking at me? You see any flies on me?
I just wonder what it feels like.
Well, it must feel terrible, huh? I mean to say, there can't be much fun in it, huh? Like, for instance, you wouldn't have no appetite for chicken soup, would you? Which you have now, huh? Yeah. All right, then just be glad you ain't dead, and let's eat.
Right this way, Mrs. Bunker. This is our slumber room.
Where is everybody?
Well, you're here, and she's there.
Oh. I meant the others. Am I too early?
No, as a matter of fact, you're not. You're the only one who's been here so far.
Oh. It's a nice room.
Thank you. If ever the need should arise, Mrs. Bunker.
Oh, thank you. But my husband and me are already spoken for.
If you want anything while you're here, just ring our hospitality bell. Excuse me.
Are you sure that nobody else has been here?
Not a soul.
Aunt Rose. I wish you could hear me. You look like you can hear me. Aunt Rose, I'm sorry that I never came to see you all those years. But I didn't think you wanted to see me because you was mad at me for marrying Archie. Then years later, when we bumped into each other at Gertz's department store on Jamaica Avenue, and I said, "Hello, Aunt Rose," and you said, "Are you still married to that bum?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And you walked right away from me. You was wrong about Archie. He's been a wonderful father and husband. Oh, husband first, of course. Too bad you never got married and had children. You told me at my wedding that when a person marries, they gotta give up too much of themselves. I got back a lot more than I give up. I guess it's all in the way you look at it. No one can say that you didn't have a chance to marry. Oh, that man that lived next door to you loved you with all his heart. What was his name? Don't tell me. Oh, Aunt Rose, I want to tell you how much it meant to me when I was a little girl to visit your farm in Mineola. Oh, my, the summer used... Oh, Rasmussen, that was the name of the man who loved you. Rasmussen, Byron, yeah, Byron Rasmussen. He kept goats in his living room. He never talked. It's a shame the others didn't come, but we're having a nice visit. We're getting to know each other. Getting to know about you. Getting to like you. Getting to like me.
Mrs. Bunker, I just made some coffee. Please, maybe you better have some, huh?
just one.
I know. Why don't you sit down for a while, huh?
Thank you.
Is everything all right?
Oh, yeah, delicious.
Mrs. Bunker, would you mind if I take a couple of the chairs out of here? We have a very large bereavement in the eternal peace room.
Go right ahead.
Excuse me. Standees are ready over there.
I ain't left yet, Aunt Rose. I'm just sitting over here where you can't see me.
She was a wonderful woman.
Yeah, wonderful.
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 I thought there'd be a bigger crowd.
The others will be here soon, I hope. Would you like some coffee?
No, I couldn't. My wife would have come too, but she was just too grief-stricken.
Oh, that's too bad.
A wonderful woman.
Your wife?
No, I mean... My wife's wonderful, too.
So is my husband.
You know, I thought there'd be a mob. So many people loved her.
Well, you and me are here. At least poor Aunt Rose ain't alone.
Aunt Rose? You mean that isn't Agnes Moncrief in there?
No, that's Rose Louise Baines.
Oh. I am so sorry.
Oh, me too. I guess you want the next room.
I'm sorry. It was nice meeting you.
Oh, it was very nice to meet you. I hope we see each other again.
You'll see, she looks beautiful.
Excuse me. I think I've got the wrong room. I'm looking for Moncrief.
Oh, just follow these mourners here. I'm sorry, Mrs. Bunker, but I'm gonna need some more of these chairs. The eternal peace room overfloweth. What a turnout.
I'm sorry you didn't have a bigger send-off, Aunt Rose? Oh, I think it's terrible that you have to go alone with nobody caring. It ain't fair. It just ain't fair. I'll miss you, Aunt Rose. Goodbye. Have a nice trip. Archie! Oh, what are you doing here?
Well, it was late, so I borrowed Munson's cab. You know, if I got picked up.
Oh, where's Stephanie?
Oh, she's with me. She fell asleep in the cab, you know, so I locked her in there.
Was she all right?
Yeah, she's fine. You know, like we used to do with Arthur the cat. I cracked the window a little. So, where's everybody? You're the last one, huh?
Archie, I'm the only one.
Oh, gee. Well, Edith, you know, see what happens, huh? That's why I make it the first rule in life is always be sweet to everybody.
Oh, Archie, I hope that when it's my turn, people will come to say goodbye.
Edith, don't be talking about your time. Jeez, that's a long way off, you know. Well, listen, I'll tell you something. When it is your time, boy, they're going to be coming from more alone. Way out in the island, over in Jersey, Brooklyn. The kids will be back in California. And I'll be there, won't I?
Oh, Archie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, Edith. Well, let's get out of here, huh?
The afternoon sun filtered through the lace curtains of the living room in Queens, casting long and nostalgic shadows across the worn carpet. It was a time for memories, a time when the world seemed to move at a slower and more predictable pace. Archie and Edith sat together, their voices rising in a familiar harmony that echoed the sentiments of a bygone era. They sang of the way Glenn Miller played, and of the songs that made the hit parade. To men like them, it felt as though they had it made in those days. There was a sense of certainty then, a clear understanding of the world, where girls were girls and men were men. They lamented the loss of leadership, wishing for a man like Herbert Hoover again, someone who represented the values they held dear. In their recollection, there was no need for a welfare state because everybody pulled his weight. Even the sounds of their old car seemed better in the golden haze of memory. Those were the days they cherished, a time of simplicity and clear boundaries. However, the harmony of the song was soon replaced by the familiar friction of their daily lives. Archie sat back in his chair, his face contorted with a stubborn resolve. He looked at Edith and spoke with a firmness that brooked no argument. He told her no, repeating the word 3 times for emphasis. He pleaded with her to stop bugging him about the matter, stating that he was telling her for the last time. He declared that he was not going to go to that funeral. He had been to enough funerals to last him a lifetime, and he saw no reason to add one more to the list. Edith, ever the voice of gentle persistence and compassion, looked at him with pleading eyes. She suggested that if he could not pay his last respects to poor Aunt Rose at her grave, he should at least go to the visitation. She called it paying his next to the last respects. But Archie remained unmoved. He decided to tell her the truth, or at least his version of it. He confessed that he had no respects for the woman at all. To him, the visitation was even worse than the burying. He explained that at least with the burying, one was outside. One could look away at the trees or a traffic jam or even a holdup. But going into one of those mortuary joints gave him the creeps. It was the confinement and the atmosphere that he could not stand. Edith tried to remind him of his own words, saying that he always claimed it gave him a lift when he left such places. Archie, however, was quickly distracted by the newspaper in his hands. He pointed out a sensational story about a boy meeting a woman who claimed to have slept with 6 presidents. He detailed them as 1 Mexican, 1 French, and 4 Americans. It was his way of changing the subject, but Edith was not to be deterred. She begged him once more to go with her, noting that the whole family would be there and they would wonder where he was. Archie's response was characteristically blunt. He told her to tell them that they could not take him off his kidney machine. When Edith pleaded with him not to say such things, he pivoted to another excuse. He asked who would take care of the kid if he went with her. Edith suggested getting a babysitter, but Archie immediately shot that down. He declared that he hated having strangers in their home. With 4 repetitions of her name, he told her the case was closed. Edith sighed, her heart heavy with a mixture of guilt and sadness. She wished she could tell Aunt Rose how bad she felt. She reproached herself for not going to see her when she was slipping away. Archie, however, had little sympathy for her guilt. He remarked that the Lord knew she had plenty of chances for that, describing Aunt Rose as an old ruin that had been slipping away for the last 30 years. Edith insisted that she kept meaning to go, but something always came up. Archie scoffed at this, telling her to be honest with herself. He reminded her that she had often said Aunt Rose was the one relative she misliked the worst. Edith tried to soften her past words, claiming she only meant Aunt Rose was the one she did not like the best. Archie laughed at her optimism, saying she would find something to like even in the beard of Castro. He grew annoyed when she called her poor Aunt Rose, reminding her of how much the woman had hated him. He recalled the way she would holler at Edith in front of everyone, calling him a very common person. That insult had cut deep into him over the years. He even accused Aunt Rose of writing a letter to a famous advice columnist about him. Edith defended her aunt, saying she never wrote that letter. But Archie was convinced. He pointed out that the woman who wrote the letter was from Ozone Park and signed herself as disappointed. He argued that while there were many disappointed people in Ozone Park, the description fit perfectly. The letter had complained about a niece marrying a bum, and Archie was certain that the bum in question was him. As they spoke, Stephanie entered the room, noticed Edith was all dressed up, and asked where she was going. Edith explained she was going to pay a visit to poor Aunt Rose. When Stephanie asked if she was still sick, Edith gently explained that she had passed away. Archie, in his usual rough manner, clarified that it meant she died. He even spelled it out, though he used the wrong letters. Stephanie corrected his spelling, noting that the way he spelled it meant changing colors. Archie retorted that he bet she had done that too. Edith prepared to leave, mentioning that she had made chicken soup for Aunt Rose, but now Archie and Stephanie could have it for dinner since poor Aunt Rose could not eat it anymore. Archie made a dark joke about the soup, but Edith was already on her way out, reminding them that the soup was hot and ready. Archie watched her go, relieved that he did not have to attend. He admitted to Stephanie that he was scared of dead people. Stephanie, curious and young, mentioned that the only dead person she had ever seen was a cat in Central Park. She described it vividly, much to Archie's distaste. He joked that in Central Park, the cat must have been mugged. Stephanie then asked what it felt like to be dead. Archie found himself uncomfortable under her gaze, asking if she saw any flies on him. He mused that being dead must feel terrible because one would have no appetite for chicken soup. He urged her to be glad she was not dead and to focus on eating. Meanwhile, at the funeral home, Edith was led into the slumber room. The atmosphere was quiet and somber. She looked around, surprised to find the room empty. When she asked where everybody was, the attendant informed her that she was the only one who had been there so far. Edith remarked on the nice room, and the attendant offered his services for the future, which Edith politely declined, saying she and her husband were already spoken for. Left alone with Aunt Rose, Edith began to speak. She apologized for the years of absence, explaining that she thought Aunt Rose did not want to see her because of her marriage to Archie. She recalled a brief, cold encounter at a department store where Aunt Rose had asked if she was still married to that bum. Edith told the silent figure that she was wrong about Archie. She praised him as a wonderful father and husband, though she corrected herself to say husband first. She expressed regret that Aunt Rose never married or had children. She remembered Aunt Rose's warning at her wedding that marriage required giving up too much of oneself, but Edith felt she had received much more than she gave up. She reminisced about a man named Byron Rasmussen who had loved Aunt Rose. He was a man who kept goats in his living room and never talked. Edith found it a shame that others had not come, but she tried to make the best of her visit, talking to Aunt Rose as if they were finally getting to know each other and finding a mutual affection. The attendant returned with coffee and asked to take some chairs for a larger bereavement in the next room. Edith agreed, and soon she was joined by a stranger who mistook her for a mourner of another person. They exchanged brief, polite words about the deceased being wonderful. However, it soon became clear that the man was in the wrong room. He was looking for Agnes Moncrief, not Rose Louise Baines. After he left, the attendant took even more chairs, leaving Edith alone in an increasingly empty space. Edith felt a deep sadness for her aunt. She thought it was terrible that Aunt Rose had to go with such a small send-off, alone and with nobody seemingly caring. She whispered her goodbyes, wishing her a nice trip. Just then, Archie appeared. He had borrowed a cab to pick her up, with Stephanie asleep in the back. He noticed the empty room and the lack of other mourners. He used the moment to offer a piece of advice, saying that his first rule in life was to always be sweet to everybody so that people would show up for them in the end. Edith, moved by the loneliness of the scene, hoped that when it was her turn, people would come to say goodbye. Archie, in a rare moment of genuine tenderness, told her not to talk about her time, as it was a long way off. He assured her that when the day finally came, people would come from all over, from the island, Jersey, Brooklyn, and even California. And most importantly, he promised that he would be there. Edith was deeply touched, her heart filling with gratitude. They left the funeral home together, leaving the quiet slumber room behind as they headed back to the life they built together in Queens. The evening air in the living room of the house on Hauser Street was thick with the scent of memory and the faint lingering aroma of a home-cooked dinner. Archie Bunker sat in his favorite chair, the one that had shaped itself to his frame over the course of many years, while the melodies of a distant era seemed to echo through the halls of his mind. He thought back to the way Glenn Miller played, the brassy notes of an orchestra that defined a generation. Those were the songs that made the hit parade, melodies that you could hum along to, tunes that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. For guys like Archie and his friends, life had felt certain then. They had it made. Those were the days when a person knew exactly where they stood in the world. Girls were girls, and men were men. There was a sense of order, a predictable rhythm to existence that seemed to have slipped away like sand through a person's fingers. Archie often felt that the world could use a man like Herbert Hoover again, someone who represented a time before everything became so complicated. Back then, people did not talk about the welfare state every hour of the day. Everybody pulled his weight, and the sound of their old LaSalle car out on the street sounded like music. Those truly were the days. But the peace of the moment was shattered by the persistent, gentle voice of his wife. Edith Bunker stood before him, her face etched with a mixture of sadness and determination. Archie groaned, shaking his head. "No, no, no," he said, his voice rising in a familiar cadence of frustration. He looked at her and repeated that he was telling her for the last time. He told her to stop bugging him about it. He declared with absolute finality that he was not going to go to that funeral. He felt he had been to enough funerals to last him a lifetime, and he did not see the point in adding one more to the list. Edith, however, was not easily swayed when it came to matters of the heart and family duty. She looked at him with her wide, innocent eyes and suggested that if he could not pay his last respects to poor Aunt Rose at her grave, he should at least go to the visitation. She argued that he could pay his next to the last respects. It was a matter of being neighborly and familial, a way to show that they were part of a community. Archie leaned forward, decided to tell her the absolute truth. He confessed that he did not have any respects for the woman at all. To him, the visitation was even worse than the burying. He explained his logic with a wave of his hand. At least with a burying, a person was outside in the fresh air. You could look away from the sadness. You could focus your eyes on the trees or perhaps a traffic jam, or even a holdup on the street. It gave the mind something else to do. But going into one of those mortuary joints gave him the creeps. The stillness and the heavy scent of flowers were more than he could stand. Edith tilted her head, reminding him of something he had said before. She noted that he always said it gave him a lift when he left. Archie ignored the observation, his eyes falling on the newspaper in his lap. He tried to change the subject, asking her if she had seen the story about a boy who met a woman who claimed she had slept with 6 presidents. He listed them off, noting there was 1 Mexican, 1 French, and 4 Americans. It was the kind of sensational news that usually occupied his thoughts, but Edith would not be distracted. She pleaded with him once more to go with her. She worried that the whole family would be there, and they would all wonder where he was. Archie had a quick answer for that. He told her to just tell them that she could not take him off his kidney machine. Edith begged him not to say such things. She then asked who would take care of the kid if they both went. Edith suggested she could get a babysitter, but Archie shot that idea down immediately. He reminded her that he hated having strangers in their home. He repeated that the case was closed. For Archie, the matter was settled. Edith sighed, her thoughts drifting to her departed aunt. She expressed a deep wish that she could have told the woman how bad she felt. She felt a heavy weight of guilt for not going to see her when she was slipping away. Archie, in his blunt manner, pointed out that the Lord knew she had plenty of chances for that. He remarked that the old ruin had been slipping away for the last 30 years. Edith admitted that she kept meaning to go, but something always came up. Archie challenged her to be honest with herself. He reminded her that she had often said Aunt Rose was the one relative she misliked the worst. Edith corrected him, her voice soft. She said she had only said that Aunt Rose was the one she did not like the best. Archie scoffed, remarking that Edith would find something to like in the beard of a revolutionary like Castro. He grew annoyed as she continued to mourn poor Aunt Rose. He reminded her of how much the woman had hated him. He would never forget the way she would come up to them, right in front of everyone, and holler at Edith. She would tell her that she was marrying a very common person. Those words had cut into Archie over the years. He also remembered the letter she had written to dear Abby. Edith tried to defend her aunt, saying she never wrote that letter. But Archie was certain. The woman who wrote it was from Ozone Park, and she had signed herself as disappointed. He pointed out that there were many people disappointed in Ozone Park, but the details were too specific. The woman had written that she had a niece who married a bum. Archie was convinced that there was no one else that description could possibly fit but him. Just then, Stephanie entered the room. She looked at Edith, who was dressed in her best clothes, and asked where she was going. Edith explained that she was going to pay a little visit to poor Aunt Rose. The young girl asked if the aunt was still sick. Edith gently told her no, not anymore, because she had passed away. Stephanie was confused by the phrasing, asking what passed away meant. Archie jumped in with his usual directness, telling the girl it meant she did not have gas. She died. He even spelled it out, though he used the letters D-Y-E-D. Stephanie, being a bright child, corrected his spelling. She told him he meant D-I-E-D, because D-Y-E-D meant changing colors. Archie, never wanting to be wrong, joked that he bet the woman had done that too. Edith prepared to leave, mentioning that she meant to go see her aunt before she went, but she went before Edith could go. She had made a nice pot of chicken soup for her, but now Archie and Stephanie could have it for dinner. She remarked that poor Aunt Rose could not eat it now. Archie made a small joke about the aunt's legendary thriftiness, suggesting that if they put the soup on the carpet, she might still grab for it. Edith said her goodbyes and left the house. Archie watched her go, telling her to enjoy herself, though he was glad he did not have to join her. He admitted to Stephanie that he was scared of dead people. Stephanie noted that the person in question was even more scary when she was alive. She shared that the only dead person she had ever seen was a cat lying on a rock in Central Park. Archie tried to stop her from telling the story, but she continued anyway, describing the blood. Archie figured the cat must have been mugged, given where it was found. Stephanie sat down, looking thoughtful. She asked what it was like to be dead. Archie looked around, asking why she was looking at him and if she saw any flies on him. He mused that it must feel terrible, and there certainly could not be much fun involved. For instance, a person would not have any appetite for chicken soup. He told the girl to just be glad she was not dead and urged her to eat. Meanwhile, at the funeral home, the director led Edith into a quiet room. He called it the slumber room. Edith looked around, wondering where everybody else was. The director told her that she was there, and the aunt was there. Edith realized she was the only visitor so far. She looked at the room, noting it was nice. The director offered his services for the future, but Edith politely declined, saying she and her husband were already spoken for. He told her to ring the hospitality bell if she needed anything. Left alone, Edith approached the casket. She spoke to Aunt Rose, wishing she could hear her. She apologized for the years of silence. She explained that she did not think the aunt wanted to see her because she was so angry about the marriage to Archie. She recalled a time they bumped into each other at a department store on Jamaica Avenue. Edith had said hello, but Aunt Rose had only asked if she was still married to that bum before walking away. Edith told the silent figure that she was wrong about Archie. He had been a wonderful father and a wonderful husband. She admitted he was a husband first, of course. Edith reflected on how Aunt Rose had never married. She remembered the aunt saying that when a person marries, they give up too much of themselves. But Edith felt she had gotten back much more than she ever gave up. She mentioned a man named Byron Rasmussen, a neighbor who had loved the aunt with all his heart. He was a man who kept goats in his living room and never talked much. It was a shame, Edith thought, that things had not turned out differently for her aunt. She felt a sadness that no one else had come to visit. She tried to make the best of it, telling the aunt they were having a nice visit and getting to know each other. The funeral director returned with some coffee and suggested she sit down for a while. He then asked if he could take some of the chairs, explaining there was a very large bereavement in the other room. Edith told him to go right ahead. As she sat there, a stranger walked in. He spoke of what a wonderful woman she was. Edith agreed, though she was surprised by his presence. They talked about the small crowd, and the man expressed his surprise as well. He mentioned his wife would have come too, but she was too grief-stricken. It soon became clear, however, that they were talking about two different people. The man was looking for Agnes Moncrief. When he realized his mistake, he apologized and left for the other room where the larger crowd was gathered. Edith felt a pang of loneliness for her aunt. She thought it was terrible that she had to go with nobody caring. She whispered a final goodbye, wishing her a nice trip. Just as she was preparing to leave, Archie appeared in the doorway. He had borrowed a cab to pick her up. Stephanie was with him, asleep in the car. Archie saw that Edith was the only one there, and his heart softened. He told her that his first rule in life was to always be sweet to everybody so that people would show up at the end. He looked at his wife and reassured her. He told her that when it was her time, which was a long way off, people would be coming from everywhere. They would come from the island, from Jersey, and from Brooklyn. Even the kids from California would be there. And most importantly, Archie promised that he would be there too. Edith smiled, her heart full of love for the man who sometimes acted like a bum but had the soul of a poet in her eyes. Together, they walked out of the funeral home and into the night, ready to go home. The sun was beginning to set over the quiet streets of the neighborhood, casting long and golden shadows that stretched across the familiar houses. Inside the home of the Bunker family, the atmosphere was filled with the echoes of a time that seemed to be slipping away into the fog of memory. It was an era characterized by the rhythmic melodies of the piano and the soulful tunes of Glenn Miller. In those days, the music did not just play. It spoke to the hearts of the people, creating songs that effortlessly made their way to the hit parade. For men like Archie, those were the years when life felt structured and meaningful. There was a sense of certainty in the world. People knew exactly where they stood. Girls were girls, embracing their grace, and men were men, standing tall with a sense of responsibility. It was a time when the leadership of a man like Herbert Hoover was respected, and the community felt a shared sense of purpose. There was no reliance on a welfare state because every individual understood the importance of pulling their own weight. The world was simpler then, and even the sounds of an old car engine seemed like a great symphony to the ears of those who lived through it. However, the peace of the afternoon was suddenly interrupted by the sharp sound of an argument in the living room. Archie sat firmly in his chair, his expression fixed in a state of stubborn determination. He looked toward his wife, Edith, and spoke with a voice that carried the weight of a final decision. He told her that he was speaking to her for the last time. He pleaded with her to stop bothering him about the matter. He was not going to go to that funeral. Archie explained that he had attended enough funerals to last him an entire lifetime. The very thought of it seemed to weigh heavily on his spirit. Edith, ever the compassionate soul, looked at him with eyes full of gentle pleading. She suggested that if he could not bring himself to pay his last respects to poor Aunt Rose at her grave, he should at least consider going to the visitation. To her, it was a matter of paying the next to the last respects. But Archie was not moved by her sentimentality. He decided to tell her the absolute truth. He confessed that he did not have any respect for the woman at all. Furthermore, he expressed a deep hatred for the visitation process itself. He argued that the visitation was actually worse than the burial. At a burial, one was at least outside in the open air. There were distractions to be found. One could look away at the trees, or perhaps watch a distant traffic jam, or even witness a robbery in progress. Anything was better than being trapped inside a mortuary. To Archie, those places were joints that gave him the creeps. Edith reminded him of his past comments, noting that he always said it gave him a lift when he finally walked out of those places. Archie tried to change the subject by pointing at a newspaper article. He asked her if she had seen the story about a young boy meeting a woman who claimed she had slept with 6 presidents. He listed them out carefully, noting that one was Mexican, one was French, and 4 were Americans. He seemed fascinated by the absurdity of the world outside, perhaps as a way to escape the somber reality of the conversation at hand. Edith ignored the distraction and begged him once more to go with her. She pointed out that the whole family would be there, and they would all wonder where he was. Archie, reaching for any excuse, told her to simply tell them that she could not take him off his kidney machine. Edith pleaded with him not to say such things. She then asked who would take care of the kid if she went alone. Archie suggested getting a babysitter, but Edith knew his feelings on the matter. He reminded her that he hated having strangers in their home. Finally, Archie declared the case closed. He repeated the words with finality, hoping to end the discussion once and for all. Edith sighed, her heart heavy with a mixture of grief and regret. She expressed a wish that she could have told Aunt Rose how bad she felt. She felt a deep sense of guilt for not visiting her while she was slipping away. Archie, however, was quick to point out that she had been given plenty of chances. He described the old woman as a ruin that had been slipping away for the last 30 years. Edith admitted that she kept meaning to go, but something always seemed to come up at the last minute. Archie challenged her honesty, reminding her that she had often said Aunt Rose was the one relative she disliked the most. Edith corrected him softly, saying she only meant that Aunt Rose was the one she did not like the best. Archie chuckled, remarking that Edith would find something to like even in the beard of a man like Castro. The conversation turned to the memories of how Aunt Rose had treated them. Archie recalled how the woman seemed to harbor a deep-seated hatred for him. He remembered how she would stand in front of everyone and yell at Edith, telling her that she was marrying a very common person. Those words had cut deep into Archie over the years, and he had never forgotten the sting of them. He even brought up a letter that he believed Aunt Rose had written to an advice columnist. The letter was from someone in Ozone Park who signed herself as disappointed. The writer claimed to have a niece who married a bum. Archie was convinced it was about him, despite Edith's insistence that many people in Ozone Park were disappointed and that Aunt Rose would never do such a thing. Just then, Stephanie entered the room, looking polished and dressed in her best clothes. Archie asked where she was going, and she explained that she was going to pay a little visit to poor Aunt Rose. When Stephanie asked if the woman was still sick, Archie clarified the situation in his own blunt way. He told her that Aunt Rose had passed away. When Stephanie seemed confused by the term, Archie spelled it out for her, although he used the word for changing colors instead of the word for ceasing to live. Stephanie corrected his spelling, and Archie quipped that the woman had probably changed colors as well. Edith prepared to leave, mentioning that she had made chicken soup for Aunt Rose. Since the woman could no longer eat it, she told Archie and Stephanie they could have it for dinner. She left instructions for the soup, telling them it was hot and only needed to be put on the table. As she walked out the door, Archie called out for her to enjoy herself, though his voice lacked any real enthusiasm. He admitted to Stephanie that he was scared of dead people. Stephanie shared a story about the only dead thing she had ever seen, which was a cat in Central Park. Archie joked that in a place like Central Park, the cat must have been mugged. Stephanie began to wonder aloud about what it felt like to be dead. She looked at Archie for an answer, but he brushed it off, telling her that it must feel terrible since one would lose their appetite for chicken soup. He encouraged her to be glad she was alive and urged her to eat. Meanwhile, Edith arrived at the funeral home. The director led her to the slumber room, a place of quiet and heavy silence. Edith was surprised to find the room empty and asked where everyone was. The director informed her that she was the only one who had arrived so far. He offered her the use of a hospitality bell if she needed anything. Alone in the room, Edith approached the casket and began to speak to Aunt Rose. She apologized for the years of silence. She explained that she stayed away because she thought Aunt Rose did not want to see her after she married Archie. She recalled a chance meeting at a department store on Jamaica Avenue where Aunt Rose had once again referred to Archie as a bum. Edith defended her husband, telling the silent form of her aunt that Archie had been a wonderful father and a wonderful husband. She expressed sadness that Aunt Rose had never experienced the joy of marriage and children. She remembered a man named Byron Rasmussen who had loved Aunt Rose with all his heart, even if he did keep goats in his living room. Edith reflected on the summers spent at the farm in Mineola and began to sing a soft song about getting to know and like someone. The funeral director returned with coffee and asked to borrow some chairs for a much larger gathering in the next room. Edith realized that while the other room was overflowing with mourners, Aunt Rose was left alone. She felt a deep sense of injustice. A man briefly entered the room by mistake, looking for a woman named Agnes Moncrief. When he realized he was in the wrong place, he left, leaving Edith in the silence once more. Edith felt the weight of loneliness pressing down on her. She told the empty room that it was not fair that Aunt Rose had to go with nobody caring. She whispered a final goodbye and wished her a nice trip. Just as she was about to leave, she was startled to see Archie standing there. He had borrowed a cab to pick her up, bringing Stephanie along as well. Archie explained that Stephanie was asleep in the car and that he had cracked the window for her, just like they used to do for their old cat. Archie looked around the empty room and realized that Edith had been the only one to show up. In that moment, his rough exterior softened. He told Edith that this was why his first rule in life was to always be sweet to everybody. Edith, touched by his presence, expressed a hope that when her time came, people would come to say goodbye to her. Archie comforted her, telling her that her time was a long way off. He assured her that when the day finally arrived, people would travel from all over the islands, from Jersey, Brooklyn, and even California to be there. Most importantly, he promised that he would be there for her. With a gentle sense of peace, they left the mortuary together, walking out into the night as a family. The echoes of the past often lingered in the living room of the Bunker household, carried by the soft, nostalgic hum of a melody that spoke of a different time. It was a song about the way Glenn Miller played, and the songs that made the hit parade in those bygone years. For men like Archie, those were the days when they felt they had it made, a time when you knew exactly where you stood in the world. In that era, the roles were clear, and the world seemed to turn on a simpler axis where girls were girls and men were men. There was a yearning in the air for a leader like Herbert Hoover once again, a time before the complexities of the modern welfare state took hold. Back then, it felt as though everybody pulled his own weight, and even the old LaSalle automobile sounded like a mechanical symphony. Those were indeed the days, etched in memory like a golden photograph. But the present moment in the house on 79th Street was far from a quiet melody. Archie Bunker sat in his favorite chair, his voice rising in a firm and absolute refusal. He looked at his wife and spoke with a tone that brooked no argument. "No, no, no," he said, drawing out each word for emphasis. He addressed her by name, repeating it 3 times as he often did when his patience was wearing thin. "Edith, Edith, Edith, I am telling you for the last time, no." He pleaded with her to stop bugging him about the matter, stating clearly that he was not going to go to that funeral. He felt he had been to enough funerals to last him an entire lifetime, and his resolve was as solid as a stone wall. Edith, however, possessed a gentle persistence that was fueled by her deep sense of duty and compassion. She looked at her husband with those kind, earnest eyes and suggested that if he could not pay his last respects to poor Aunt Rose at her grave, he should at least go to the visitation. She called it paying his next to the last respects, a concept that only made sense in her uniquely logical heart. Archie was not swayed. He decided it was time to tell her the absolute truth. He admitted that he did not have any respects for the woman at all. To him, the visitation was even worse than the actual burying. At a burial, he reasoned, you were at least outside in the fresh air. You could distract yourself by looking away at the trees or perhaps watching a distant traffic jam or even a robbery happening down the street. But going into one of those mortuary establishments gave him the creeps, a feeling of unease that he could not shake off. Edith tried to remind him of his own words, pointing out that he always said it gave him a lift whenever they finally left such a place. Archie, sensing he was losing ground, tried to change the subject quickly. He pointed to a story in the newspaper about a young man who met a woman who claimed to have slept with 6 presidents. He listed them off, 1 Mexican, 1 French, and 4 Americans. It was a desperate attempt at a distraction, but Edith would not be diverted from her mission. She begged him once more to go with her, noting that the whole family would be there and they would all wonder where he was. Archie had a ready excuse. He told her to just inform the family that she could not take him off his kidney machine, a wild exaggeration that brought a plea from Edith for him to stop being so difficult. He then raised the practical concern of who would take care of the child if they both went. Edith suggested getting a babysitter, but Archie immediately shot that idea down. He reminded her that she knew how much he hated having strangers in their home. With a finality that he hoped would end the conversation, he repeated her name 4 more times and declared the case closed. Edith sighed, her heart heavy with a different kind of regret. She wished she could tell the departed Rose how bad she felt. She reproached herself for not going to see her aunt while she was slipping away. Archie, never one to let a moment of self-reflection pass without a sharp comment, noted that the Lord knew she had plenty of chances. He described the poor woman as an old ruin who had been slipping away for the last 30 years. Edith insisted that she had kept meaning to go, but something had always come up to stop her. Archie challenged her honesty, reminding her that she had often said Aunt Rose was the one relative she disliked the worst. Edith corrected him with her typical sweetness, saying she only meant that Rose was the one she did not like the best. Archie scoffed, saying Edith could find something to like even in the beard of a revolutionary like Castro. He grew tired of the sympathy for poor Aunt Rose, reminding Edith of how much the woman had hated him. He would never forget the way she would stand in front of everyone and shout that Edith Baines was marrying a very common person. That insult had cut deep into him over the many years they had been married. He also remembered a letter written to a famous advice columnist, Dear Abby, which he was certain was about him. Edith tried to defend her aunt, saying Rose never wrote such a letter. But Archie was convinced. The woman who wrote the letter was from Ozone Park, and she had signed herself as disappointed. Archie pointed out that while there were many disappointed people in Ozone Park, the letter specifically mentioned a niece who had married a bum. To Archie, there was no doubt who that bum was. As the conversation shifted, the young Stephanie entered the room, seeing her aunt all dressed up and ready to go out. She asked where she was going, and Edith explained she was paying a visit to poor Aunt Rose. When Stephanie asked if the aunt was still sick, Edith gently explained that she had passed away. Archie, in his blunt manner, clarified for the girl that the woman had died. He even spelled it out, though he used the letters D-Y-E-D. Stephanie, being a bright child, corrected him, noting that D-I-E-D meant death, while his spelling referred to changing the colors of fabric. Archie, with a grim sort of humor, bet that the woman had probably done that too. Edith prepared to leave, mentioning that she had made a nice chicken soup for her aunt which she had intended to bring before she went, but now Archie and Stephanie could have it for dinner instead. She mused that poor Aunt Rose could not eat it now, a thought that led Archie to crack another joke about the woman's greed. After Edith left, Archie expressed his relief at staying behind. He admitted that he was scared of dead people. Stephanie agreed, though she noted that this particular person had been more scary when she was alive. She shared a memory of the only dead thing she had ever seen, which was a cat in Central Park. Archie, ever the cynic, remarked that the cat must have been mugged. As they sat down to eat the soup, Stephanie asked what it felt like to be dead. Archie looked at her with a mix of confusion and discomfort, asking if she saw any flies on him. He supposed it must feel terrible and certainly not much fun. For one thing, he noted, a dead person would have no appetite for chicken soup. He told the girl to just be glad she was not dead and to focus on eating. Meanwhile, at the funeral home, Edith was led into the slumber room. The atmosphere was quiet and somber. She looked around the empty room and asked where everyone was. The attendant informed her that she was the only one there so far. He politely mentioned that if she needed anything, she should ring the hospitality bell. Edith stood alone with the casket, looking at the face of her aunt. She began to speak, her voice a soft whisper in the still air. She apologized for the years of silence, explaining that she did not think Rose wanted to see her because of her marriage to Archie. She recalled a brief encounter at a department store on Jamaica Avenue years ago, where Rose had asked if she was still married to that bum and then walked away when Edith said yes. Edith defended her husband to the silent figure, saying he had been a wonderful father and husband. She expressed sorrow that Rose had never married or had children, recalling how Rose believed marriage required giving up too much of oneself. Edith disagreed, believing she had received much more than she ever gave up. She reminded the silent woman of a man named Rasmussen, Byron Rasmussen, who had loved her with all his heart. He was a man who kept goats in his living room and never talked, but he had cared for her. Edith felt it was a shame that the others had not come yet, but she treated the moment as a nice visit, a chance to finally get to know her aunt. As she sat there, another man entered the room, looking mournful. Edith, ever the hostess, offered him some of the coffee she had been given. They spoke briefly about what a wonderful woman the deceased was, though it soon became clear they were talking about two different people. The man was looking for a woman named Agnes Moncrief, and when he realized he was in the wrong room, he apologized and left. The funeral director came back to borrow more chairs, explaining that there was a very large crowd in the Eternal Peace Room for another service. Edith felt a pang of sadness for her aunt, seeing how the other room overflowed while Rose remained alone. She whispered a final goodbye, wishing her aunt a nice trip. To her surprise, Archie appeared at the door. He had borrowed a taxi from a friend to come and pick her up. Stephanie was with him, asleep in the car. Archie looked around the empty room and realized that Edith had been the only one to show up. He felt a rare moment of sympathy, noting that this was why his first rule in life was always to be sweet to everyone so that they would have a crowd at their own send-off. Edith, touched by his presence, expressed her hope that when her time came, people would come to say goodbye. Archie comforted her, telling her that her time was a long way off. He promised her that when that day finally arrived, people would come from all over, from the island, from Jersey, from Brooklyn, and even the kids from California. And most importantly, he promised that he would be right there with her. They left the quiet room together, moving back toward the light and the living, bound by a love that had weathered 30 years of storms and remained as strong as ever. The sun filtered through the lace curtains of the living room in Queens, casting long, nostalgic shadows across the worn furniture that had seen decades of life, laughter, and the occasional heated debate. Archie Bunker sat at the piano, his fingers finding the familiar chords as he and Edith began their ritualistic song, a melody that served as a bridge to a past they held dear. They sang about the way Glenn Miller played, evoking memories of songs that had once dominated the hit parade. It was a time when men like them felt they truly had it made. Those were the days they cherished, a time when social structures felt certain and clear. They recalled a world where girls were girls and men were men, a time before the complexities of the modern era had begun to blur the lines of their understanding. Archie, with a certain wistful gruffness in his voice, suggested that the world could truly use a man like Herbert Hoover again. In those days, there was no perceived need for a welfare state because, in their memory, everybody pulled his weight. Even their old LaSalle car had sounded great back then. Those were truly the days. However, the music eventually faded, replaced by the persistent reality of the present. Archie turned his attention to his wife, his voice rising in a familiar tone of stubborn resistance. He told Edith, calling her name 3 times for emphasis, that he was telling her for the absolute last time that the answer was no. He begged her to stop bugging him about the matter, stating firmly that he was not going to attend that funeral. Archie claimed he had been to enough funerals to last him an entire lifetime. Edith, ever the voice of gentle conscience and familial duty, looked at him with her kind, wide eyes. She suggested that if he could not bring himself to pay his last respects to poor Aunt Rose at her grave, he should at least go to the visitation to pay his next to the last respects. Archie, however, decided to be brutally honest. He confessed to Edith that he did not have any respects for the woman at all. Furthermore, he expressed a profound hatred for the concept of a visitation. He argued that a visitation was actually worse than a burial. At a burial, he reasoned, one was at least outdoors where there were distractions. One could look away at the trees, or perhaps observe a traffic jam, or even witness a holdup if the neighborhood was lively enough. But going into one of those mortuary establishments gave him the absolute creeps. Edith reminded him of his past contradictions, noting that he always said it gave him a lift when he finally left such a place. Archie tried to change the subject, pointing out a sensational story in the newspaper about a young man meeting a woman who claimed to have slept with 6 presidents, including 1 Mexican, 1 French, and 4 Americans. But Edith would not be swayed. She pleaded with him once more to go with her, arguing that the whole family would be there and they would all wonder where he was. Archie, reaching for any excuse, told her to just tell the family that she could not take him off his kidney machine. Edith begged him not to say such things. She then pointed out the practical problem of who would care for the child if she went alone. Archie dismissed this, saying she could get a babysitter, but then immediately contradicted himself by stating how much he hated having strangers in their home. Finally, he declared the case closed, repeating the phrase multiple times to signal that the discussion was over. Edith sat in silence for a moment, her heart heavy with a mixture of guilt and sorrow. She whispered that she wished she could tell Aunt Rose how bad she felt. She reproached herself for not going to see her aunt while she was slipping away. Archie, ever the realist, remarked that the Lord knew she had plenty of chances for that, as that old ruin had been slipping away for the last 30 years. Edith sighed, admitting she kept meaning to go, but something always seemed to come up. Archie challenged her honesty, reminding her that she had often said Aunt Rose was the one relative she disliked the most. Edith corrected him, saying she only meant that Aunt Rose was the one she did not like the best. She was the kind of woman who would find something to like even in the beard of a revolutionary like Castro. Archie refused to let the memory of Aunt Rose be softened by the passage of time. He recalled how much the woman had hated him. He told Edith he would never forget the way she would come into their home and, right in front of everyone, holler at Edith about how she was marrying a very common person. That insult had cut deep into Archie over the years. He also brought up the infamous letter written to the advice columnist Dear Abby. Although Edith tried to claim Aunt Rose never wrote it, Archie was convinced. He pointed out that the writer was from Ozone Park and signed herself as disappointed. He argued that while there were many disappointed people in Ozone Park, the letter specifically mentioned a niece who had married a bum. To Archie, there was no doubt who the subject of that letter was. As Edith prepared to leave, dressed in her best attire, little Stephanie entered the room. Seeing Edith ready to go, the girl asked where she was going. Edith explained she was going to pay a visit to poor Aunt Rose. When Stephanie asked if the aunt was still sick, Archie bluntly informed her that she had passed away. When the child seemed confused by the term, Archie clarified that she had died, even spelling it out as D-Y-E-D. Stephanie, being observant, corrected his spelling to D-I-E-D, noting that the way Archie spelled it meant changing colors. Archie, with a grim sort of humor, wagered that the woman had probably done that too. Edith explained that she was going to see her before the funeral, regretting that she had not gone before her aunt passed. She mentioned she had made a nice chicken soup for her, which Archie and Stephanie could now have for dinner since poor Aunt Rose could no longer eat it. Archie made a joke about the woman's supposed greed, saying that if the soup were put on the carpet, she would probably still grab for it. After Edith left, Archie and Stephanie were left alone with the soup. Archie admitted to the child that he was glad he did not have to go, confessing that he was scared of dead people. He remarked that Aunt Rose was particularly scary when she was still alive. Stephanie shared that the only dead thing she had ever seen was a cat in Central Park, lying on a rock with blood all over it. Archie, clearly uncomfortable, tried to stop her from telling the story, but the child continued anyway. He joked that the cat must have been mugged. Stephanie then asked a profound question about what it was like to be dead. Archie, feeling the weight of the question, asked why she was looking at him, jokingly checking if there were flies on him. He admitted it must feel terrible and certainly could not be much fun, especially since one would lose their appetite for chicken soup. He told the girl to just be glad she was not dead and urged her to eat. Meanwhile, at the mortuary, Edith arrived at the slumber room. The atmosphere was heavy with the scent of lilies and the silence of the departed. A staff member greeted her, and Edith asked where everybody was. The man pointed out that she was there, and the deceased was there. Edith realized she was the only one present. The man offered the services of the hospitality bell should she need anything. Left alone with a casket, Edith began a heartfelt monologue to her silent aunt. She apologized for the years of absence, explaining that she didn't think her visits were wanted because Aunt Rose had been so angry about her marriage to Archie. She recalled a chance meeting at a department store on Jamaica Avenue where the aunt's only words were a derogatory question about whether she was still married to that bum. Edith defended Archie to the silent form, calling him a wonderful father and husband. She expressed pity that Aunt Rose had never married or had children, recalling the aunt's cynical view that marriage required giving up too much of oneself. Edith disagreed, believing she had received much more than she had ever given up. Edith then reminisced about her childhood visits to Aunt Rose's farm in Mineola. She finally remembered the name of the man who had loved Aunt Rose, a man named Byron Rasmussen, who kept goats in his living room and never talked. As she spoke, the mortuary attendant returned to offer her coffee and to ask if he could borrow some chairs for a much larger and more crowded bereavement in the next room. Edith sat alone, drinking her coffee and realizing how empty the room remained. A man briefly entered the room, expressing his sorrow and commenting on what a wonderful woman the deceased was. However, it soon became clear that he was in the wrong room. He was looking for a woman named Agnes Moncrief. When he realized his mistake, he apologized and left to join the large crowd in the Eternal Peace room. Edith felt a profound sense of sadness that Aunt Rose was having such a small send-off. She whispered a final goodbye, telling her aunt she would miss her and wishing her a nice trip. Suddenly, Archie appeared at the door. He explained that it was late, so he had borrowed a neighbor's cab to pick her up. He had brought Stephanie along, though the girl had fallen asleep in the car. Archie noticed the empty room and realized that Edith had been the only visitor. In a rare moment of tenderness and reflection, Archie saw the sadness in his wife's eyes. Edith expressed her hope that when her own time came, people would come to say goodbye to her. Archie, Setting aside his usual gruff exterior, told her not to talk about such things because her time was a long way off. He reassured her with genuine warmth, telling her that when the day finally came, people would travel from all over, from the islands, from Jersey, from Brooklyn, and even the kids from California would return. Most importantly, he promised her that he would be there too. They walked out of the quiet mortuary together, heading back to the life they built, a life defined by a love that, despite all its loud arguments and stubborn moments, was as deep and enduring as the songs they sang.